Welcome back, guys. It's the Tightwad, and I have another issue with my dryer to share with you. I turned it on to dry some clothes, and when it got down to almost finished, it just continued running. And at first I couldn't figure out what was going on. I just thought it was taking a while to dry. Then I noticed that when I opened the dryer, there was no heat inside either. So it's not only not heating, but the dryer is not cutting off automatically. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on. While I'm searching for the cause of this particular issue, I'm also going to show you how to test all of the components of your dryer. Some of these components can cause your dryer not to turn on at all, and I will show you how to fix them as well. The first and easiest thing to check with your dryer is to see if it has power, and if yours has a light inside, which I think almost all dryers do, you can see if the light is illuminating. While we're already checking on the light, the second thing is to check the door switch. All dryer doors have a switch that indicates that the dryer door is closed because it will not turn on unless the switch is compressed. If you do not have any light in your dryer, it could be that your breaker has been tripped. Once you locate the main power panel for your house, or the breaker box as people call it, you need to find the one designated for the dryer. In my case, it is 1 and 3. It usually takes up 2 spaces, and here we go right here. It's 2 30-amp fuses joined together. You can see that here. And I can tell mine is not kicked, but I am going to test it by flipping it off and flipping it back on. Since the circuit is made up of 2 different breakers, there is a chance that you can still see the light on in your dryer, letting you think that everything is functioning properly, but that could just mean that one breaker is good and the other breaker is failing, which controls some of the other components. Before you unplug your dryer and start taking anything apart, there's one more thing you can check to make sure that your cord is actually getting the proper voltage to the dryer itself, which is 240 volts total. And the place we want to look is just behind this panel right here, so it has one screw holding it in on mine. If the voltage is correct here, we'll go into the most likely culprits. So I'm going to remove this panel right here and show you how to test the voltage to make sure everything is lining up correctly. So once you've removed that cover, and again, I am still plugged into the wall, so I need to be careful not to touch anything that I don't need to touch. But I'm going to test across these 3 screws right here. The first one I'm going to test is from the left side to the middle. And on my voltage meter, I should read 120 or more. The next thing I'm going to test is from the center to the right side. And again, I need 120 or more. And then the last test is to test the right side to the left side, and I should have the full circuit here at 240 or more. These readings ensure that both of the breakers are still good. If one of the breakers had gone out, it could cause part of the dryer to work and part of it not to work. You need to unplug your power cord before we do any more testing. That removes the possibility of electrical shock, and we can test everything else by just searching for continuity or ohms, so we don't need the power on for that. I'm going to remove the back panel. 6 screws around the back. If you have one of those interchangeable tip screwdrivers, that's the same size that fits on these screws. Besides the 6 screws I showed you on the side, mine did have another screw here, and then the last one was over here, but I already removed it when I was testing for this panel, so make sure you get these 3 screws as well. Today I'll be using the continuity setting for my testing, and it looks like this. And mine actually has a chime or an alarm that sounds when I have positive continuity, so that I don't have to look at the meter every time. It's helpful to have this when you're working in tight places. If you don't have continuity on your multimeter, you can go to the ohms reading. The ohms reading is either going to say OHM, or it's going to have the upside down horseshoe. And we're looking for the lowest setting. So our lowest setting on ohms here is 200 or 2000. Some only have the 2000 rating. So if you want to measure ohms on your unit, you can go simply to the 200 setting, and then you're going to have to look at your display each time, and you're wanting it to change away from 1 here, or it may say OH, but you want it to change away from this whenever you're testing each of your switches. So I'll demonstrate that here. So I have it on my lowest setting of ohms. I'm going to cross the terminals on the thermal fuse because it's easiest for me to get to. And you should see it change. See how it's now changed to 0.5 or 0.6? As long as it's getting a reading, you should be good to go. And that is when you're set on the lowest ohms setting. Since I'm having the issue where the dryer is not stopping when the cycle is over or when the clothes are dry, I'm going to start by removing the panel at the very top of the dryer, which reveals our instrument panel, and I'm going to test the timer switch first. After removing the back of your instrument panel, this side here is the timer. This is where you set how long you want your dryer to run, whether it be a time dry or an auto detection. And it can fail, so we're going to use our multimeter to test for continuity across the black and the red wire. If you get continuity here, then you know that your timer switch is at least getting power and it should be good to go. If you do have to replace your timer, make sure you take a picture of it before you remove it because there are lots of wires. Another good tip is to go ahead and get your new timer first and move one wire at a time to your new timer. The next two things we want to check are the thermal fuse and this switch here, which regulates when the heat turns on and off. I'm going to use my multimeter again, set to continuity, and I'm going to check across my blue wires on the thermal fuse. And I get a tone, so I know it's good. And then I'm going to check on this switch going across the sides of it as well. And I get tone so that I know that it is working. This should not give a tone for continuity, but if you switch to ohms, you should get some type of reading. This top part is simply a heater to fake the dryer into turning up the heat for permanent press. If either of these two things go bad, you not only need to replace them, but you need to figure out the cause of the problem. It's typically a buildup in your dryer. You can vacuum down from the top of the vent, or you can vacuum in from here, or even check the hose going from the dryer to the outside wall. Make sure you check outside to make sure there's no buildup as well. One thing people forget to check is the fan housing, which is right under here. I'm going to remove these screws and check our fan housing to see if it's clogged. On many dryers, before removing the housing of the fan, you need to remove your lint screen. On my particular dryer, there are two screws at the top of the lint screen housing that I need to remove also before I can remove the whole panel here from the back. With this now removed, it reveals the fan. I'll take my shop vac and vacuum around the outside of the fan and this section here. But I think we found our culprit. Down here at the bottom is a large buildup that hasn't been removed by my vacuuming efforts. One other thing that can go bad is the heating element. The heating element is inside this silver thing here. It looks like coils, like this. So on my heater coil housing, there's a switch here as well, and I'll check for continuity across the poles there. And we got a tone, so we know that this switch is good. And now I'll test the two leads coming out of the coil housing to see if we have continuity. And we don't get a tone, so I'm going to remove the heater coil from the unit and do some further testing. I've removed my heating element so I can show you how to test it and how to check and see what part failed. You can easily test continuity on the two posts on the inside of the housing right here. And you see that I do not get any continuity when I touch the leads on the inside or on the outside, just to make sure. Next thing we want to look for are cracks or bends or breaks. So we can see it's got some blackness right here, and that's pretty normal on an older unit. To find the break in the coil, you can kind of push them or move them, and if one part moves and another part doesn't, then you know that's where the issue is. And when we move here, we see that we have a break in our coil. So this unit is bad. It cannot be salvaged. So I've already gone to the parts store and purchased a new unit. This is what a brand new one looks like. Everything's nice and clean. There's nothing broken. All the wires should be good, and I'm going to go ahead and test for continuity just to make sure. And we immediately get a tone. The lady at the parts store actually had this under the counter instead of in the back in the warehouse. She said that I have the most common type of dryer and that this is the part that people typically have to replace when it fails. It cost about $70, which is unfortunate, but we know that our dryer is almost good as new now that we have a brand new coil for it. The only part we have to remove from our old heater coil is this. So I'm going to pry up using a screwdriver on this spade connector here to remove it from the unit. You could use a flathead screwdriver or you could use a pair of pliers to pull it out. Just be careful when pulling it off not to damage it. I'm just going to kind of get up under it and wedge it. Once that's released, it should just pull right out. When installing it on the new unit, this hole right here goes in the little metal tab that's bent there. And that's what's going to hold it in place. Now I'm just simply going to push it down, all the way down on the spade connectors for the new unit. And this is ready to reinstall on our dryer. So I have the switch put on our new coil, and I'm going to slide this back into place. Just make sure you slide it up until the screw holes line up on both sides. With both screws back in place, holding our housing in the right location, it's time to replace our wires. You should have taken a picture before you remove them so that you can tell how they go back together. When hooking everything back up, make sure you attach your ground back to the body of the dryer. With everything connected again, the moment of truth. The dryer cuts on. We'll give it a couple of minutes to make sure there's heat in the dryer, and we'll call this repaired. If you found this video helpful, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I have another video showing simply how to replace the thermal fuse that I'll link right here on the screen. If you click it, it'll open right up on your device. I hope you guys have a great day. And we've got heat.